His lungs burned each breath, a ragged sore cutting through the cold air. Sweat plastered his thin shirt to his back, mixing with the grime of the road. 24 miles screamed in his legs, threatening to buckle under the dead weight slung across his shoulders. The girl limp and terrifyingly still. "I need backup. Now, checkpoint, Delta. She's fading. Is anyone hearing me? We're alone out here." The desperate voice crackled from the lone medic's radio, somewhere ahead, lost around the bend. Victory was less than 2 miles away. So close Glory escape a different life, just minutes down the parkway, but he couldn't leave her. He stumbled, tightening his grip, every muscle screaming in protest. He wouldn't leave her behind, but could he even make it? Before we dive into this incredible story of sacrifice and unexpected destiny, make sure to hit those like and subscribe buttons and ring the notification bell so you don't miss out on more powerful stories like this one. The pre-dawn chill of Birmingham had a way of biting through thin jackets, and Leo knew its sting better than most long before the sun even considered painting the sky. He was already moving a lean silhouette against the flickering yellow glow of the streetlights bordering the Oakhaven Mobile Home Park. The air sharp and cold, puffed out in visible clouds with each breath as he wrestled newspapers from his oversized canvas bag, the rusty chain of his ancient bicycle groaning in protest with every turn of the pedals. Each thump of a paper hitting a flimsy porch was a small victory against the tide of bills his parents whispered about late at night. Oakhaven wasn't the kind of place featured in brochures. It was a grid of weathered single-wides and older RVs, some listing precariously, others patched with mismatched sheets of metal yards, were mostly dirt decorated with stray tires or the skeletons of forgotten projects. Yet this was home. A cramped 2-bedroom trailer, where the smell of his dad's overnight shift at the highway gas station clung to the worn furniture, and the sound of his mum's tired sigh was as familiar as the leaky faucet drip. Breakfast was usually thin oatmeal, stretched with water. Leo always ate quickly, saving a little extra for his younger brother and sister, especially Maya, whose small chest sometimes rattled with a cough that tightened his own. Afterwards, the ritual lace up the shoes. Calling them shoes felt generous. The soles were worn smooth as river stones, practically see-through in places. One lace was a frayed piece of speaker wire, scavenged from a discarded stereo. Holes gaped near the toes, revealing socks that were equally threadbare. These weren't running shoes. They were suggestions barely holding together. Still, after the bike route, he'd lock the bike halfway and run the rest of the way to school. Not for training. Not yet. Just to save time. Just to feel the ground beneath his feet, even through the failing soles. To feel fast. He didn't know why he was fast. It wasn't something he'd trained for or inherited. It was just there, a current humming beneath his skin. When he ran even in those tattered shoes, something shifted. The quiet, almost invisible 14-year-old boy seemed to unfurl, moving with a raw, untamed grace that sometimes made people pause, a flicker of surprise in their eyes. That flicker caught the attention of Mr. Evans, one dreary Tuesday during gym class. Arthur Evans sat hunched on the cracked metal bleachers overlooking the school's sad excuse for a track. Grey-haired, lean, with eyes that seemed to miss nothing, he looked perpetually unimpressed. A former competitive runner himself decades ago, he now mostly endured these classes, occasionally muttering critiques under his breath about the general lack of hustle. Kids these days, he grumbled softly to himself, watching most students amble listlessly around the gravel track. More interested in their glowing rectangles than moving their feet. The school couldn't afford proper equipment, so track practice often resembled a slow-motion parade. Then the gym teacher blew the whistle a half-hearted sound and yelled, "All right, laps. Let's see some movement." Most kids shuffled into a faster walk. Leo, however, took off. He exploded from the loose pack, a streak of determined motion. His ragged shoes slapped against the gravel, kicking up small puffs of dust. His form was all wrong. Arms too stiff, stride a little choppy, but the speed, the raw, undeniable speed, was there. Mr. Evans sat up straighter, his gaze sharpening, tracking the boy in the worn-out clothes, leaving everyone else behind. He saw past the flaws, recognizing the unmistakable rhythm, the innate timing, the flicker of something truly special. After the bell rang, dismissing the lethargic students, Mr. Evans made his way down the bleachers, his old clipboard tucked under one arm. He intercepted Leo near the gate, the boy breathing steadily despite the sprint. "You, Mr. Evans," said his voice, raspy but clear. "You ever think about training?" Seriously. Leo blinked, surprised to be addressed. He shifted his worn backpack. "Don't got time, sir." He shrugged, his voice quiet. "Got work after school. Stacking shelves at the corner store." Mr. Evans's eyes narrowed slightly. "Right." He grunted, a flicker of something unreadable in his gaze. He seemed about to say more, then just nodded curtly. He didn't press. But he watched. He watched Leo the following week and the week after that. He started timing Leo's runs during gym class with an old battered stopwatch he dug out from a dusty box at home. He saw the kid arrive at school, breathless some mornings, saw the fatigue etched around his young eyes, saw the same ragged shoes, holding on by sheer will. One afternoon, Evans was waiting outside the small grocery store as Leo finished his shift. He held out a bottle of water. Leo took it hesitantly, murmuring a thanks. A few days later, Mr. Evans was there, again, stopwatch in hand. And the next week he held out a pair of running shoes. They were old, clearly used. The brand logo faded, but they were solid, sturdy, recognizably running shoes. "They're nothing fancy," Mr. Evans said, gruffly, holding them out. "Belonged to me back when I could actually move faster than a startled tortoise, but they'll last you longer than whatever that is you're wearing." He gestured towards Leo's feet. Leo stared at the shoes, real running shoes. He could feel his heart beat a little faster. He reached out, then hesitated, pulling his hand back. "My parents, He started looking down. "They won't like it. They think running's just wasting time." "Time is a luxury." "Few can afford, son, mister," Evans said, his voice softer now, though still gruff, but wasting talent. That's a different kind of poverty. He held the shoes out again. "Take 'em or leave 'em, your choice." That night, the air in the trailer felt thick with unspoken worries. His mother, her face lined with tiredness after a long day, cleaning houses across town, gently massaged Maya's back as the little girl coughed. His father sat slumped at the small kitchen table, staring at a pile of envelopes. Bills Leo knew. When Leo cautiously mentioned Mr. Evans and the possibility of training, his mother sighed Leo honey. She said, her voice gentle but weary, "Running won't pay the light bill. It won't buy Maya's medicine when it runs out again. You work hard. You study hard. Maybe one day you get a real job with insurance. That's the path for us. Dreams are nice, but they don't keep the cold out." His dad just looked at him, the exhaustion in his eyes saying more than words could. They weren't being cruel. They were scared of hope that led nowhere, scared of effort wasted on things that didn't fill bellies or pay rent. Leo didn't argue. He understood their fear. He felt it too. but looking at the sturdy old shoes Mr. Evans had given him, hidden under his narrow bunk, he felt something else ignite. A stubborn spark. He didn't know where running might lead, if anywhere at all. But it was his. It was the one thing that made him feel strong, feel alive, feel possible. He picked up the shoes, their solid weight unfamiliar in his hands. He looked from the worn soles to the tired faces of his parents, to the picture of Maya, smiling her gap-toothed smile. He made a decision. Quietly, resolutely, he decided he would run. He would find the time. Somehow, the rhythm of Leo's life shifted, hammered into a new, relentless cadence. Before dawn bled into the sky, he ran, not just the frantic dash to school, but deliberate miles, pounding the cracked pavement, surrounding the silent industrial park near Oakhaven. Mr. Evans, a stoic shadow on his old bicycle nearby stopwatch. Clicking after school came the weary hours stacking shelves at the grocery store, the smell of disinfectant and stale bread clinging to his clothes. Then under the bruised twilight sky, more running. Laps around the deserted school track muscles, screaming lungs burning, pushing past the point of exhaustion, while Mr. Evans barked corrections. "Pick up your knees, Leo. You're shuffling like you lost something back there." Sweat dripped into Leo's eyes, blurring the gravel track. His legs felt like lead pipes. "Trying, coach," he gasped. "Trying doesn't cut it. Pump those arms. You look like you're swatting at imaginary butterflies." Mr. Evans circled him on the bike, his expression unchanging. "Faster on the curve, lean into it. Good grief, boy. Don't turn like a barge." Leo stumbled, slightly correcting his form. Mr. Evans, despite his gruffness, had an uncanny eye. He saw every hitch in Leo's stride, every wasted motion. The feedback was blunt, often bordering on insulting but never cruel, and slowly, painfully, Leo felt the changes. His breathing grew steadier. His strides lengthened. The raw speed finding a more efficient channel. The old shoes Mr. Evans had given him, though worn, felt like wings compared to his previous pair. But speed on the track didn't translate to ease in the hallways of Northwood. High word got around about the poor kid from the trailer park, who was suddenly training like he thought he was somebody. The whispers followed him, like his own shadow, sometimes laced with curiosity, often with thinly veiled contempt. The worst of it inevitably came from Julian Vance. Julian moved through the school like he owned it, flanked by a rotating cast of equally privileged smirking friends. His clothes were always new, his hair perfectly styled, his expensive athletic gear practically radiating arrogance. He'd already been featured in the local paper. Northwood's rising star set sights on state marathon glory, a title that seemed to inflate his ego further with each passing day. He cornered Leo by the lockers one afternoon, leaning casually against the metal, blocking his path. Julian's friends snickered behind him. "Well, well." Julian drawled, his eyes flicking dismissively over Leo's worn hoodie, and then down to his shoes. Mr. Evans's old pair. Still running in those hand-me-downs trailer park, training hard for the charity division? Leo gripped his backpack strap, keeping his eyes fixed on the locker handle. "Leave me alone, Julian." "Ooh, feisty," Julian mocked, stepping closer. "Look, I get it. Running away is probably second nature where you come from, but this marathon, it's for serious athletes, people with proper coaching, proper gear." He smirked. People whose dads aren't pumping gas all night. Leo flinched but didn't rise to the bait. He could feel the familiar heat rising in his chest, the sting of shame and anger. That jacket Julian's wearing probably cost more than our rent for 2 months. He thought a quick, bitter, internal calculation. He sidestepped Julian without another word and disappeared into the crowded hallway, the laughter of Julian's friends echoing behind him. He saw Olivia Hayes sometimes, usually from a distance. She trained with a private coach at an upscale athletic club across town, the kind with pristine tracks and state-of-the-art equipment. Once during a rare weekend when Mr. Evans had him doing hill sprints on a public path, her sleek SUV drove past. Leo saw her glance over her expression unreadable, maybe a flicker of recognition, maybe just idle curiosity. Before the car sped away, she existed in a different universe, one built on resources and expectations he couldn't even fathom. The pressure wasn't just at school. It mounted at home, silently but relentlessly. His mother picked up extra cleaning shifts at a motel off the interstate, coming home later, her face etched with a deeper exhaustion. His father seemed to fall asleep, standing up. Sometimes the long hours and constant worry taking their toll. One evening, Leo dragged himself home after a brutal training session, followed by a late shift at the store. The air in the trailer felt heavy, charged with fear. He found his mother kneeling beside Maya's bed, her shoulders shaking silently. Maya was struggling for breath, her small chest heaving a whistling sound, accompanying each inhale. The inhaler. "It's empty," his mother whispered, her voice trembling. "The pharmacy closed an hour ago. I should have checked it sooner." Leo stood frozen in the doorway, the familiar weight of helplessness crushing his own aching lungs. He saw the fear in his mother's eyes, the strained lines deepening around her mouth. He thought of the hours he spent running, chasing something intangible, while his family struggled with tangible needs. The guilt was a physical blow. "It's okay, Mama," he said, forcing the words out, kneeling beside her. "We'll manage till morning." He took Maya's small hand, trying to project a calm he didn't feel. Later, after Maya's breathing eased slightly, his mother sat beside him on the worn couch. "You're doing so much, Leo," she murmured, stroking his hair. "Work in school this running. Don't think we don't see it." Shields eyed a sound laden with fatigue. "It's just... we're tired, baby. We're all just so tired." The next day, Leo moved through school and work like a ghost. The taunts from Julian barely registered. The ache in his muscles was nothing compared to the ache in his chest. When he met Mr. Evans at the track that evening, the weight felt unbearable. He ran his warm-up laps mechanically, each stride heavy with doubt. Could he keep doing this? Was it fair to his family? Was it all just a pointless dream? He slumped onto the cold bleacher afterwards, staring blankly at the gravel. Mr. Evans sat down beside him, silent for a long moment, just watching him. Finally, the old coach spoke his voice, low. "Sometimes the hardest race ain't the one on the track, Leo. It's the one in your head, the one against everything." Telling you to stop, Leo didn't answer, just clenched his jaw. He was seriously considering telling Mr. Evans he couldn't do it anymore, when a week later, a small miracle happened. Mr. Henderson, the kindly, overweight owner of the local diner, where Leo sometimes splurged on a coffee he couldn't really afford, pressed an envelope into his hand. "As he paid, heard you're running the big one," Mr. Henderson said, with a wink. "Something for the road." Inside was $50 and a hastily scribbled note. "For the boy who runs with more heart than sense. Go get 'em." Leo stared at the money, then at the note, a lump forming in his throat. It wasn't much, but it felt like something, a sign. Later that week, he found a new pair of high-performance running socks tucked anonymously into his locker, small kindnesses appearing like unexpected trail markers. He met Mr. Evans that evening, the $50 bill still folded carefully in his pocket. The doubt hadn't vanished, but the spark of hope fanned by unexpected generosity flickered a little brighter. Mr. Evans looked at him, seemed to sense the shift. He didn't ask. He just nodded slowly, ready for intervals. Leo took a deep breath, the weariness still heavy, but the crushing weight slightly lifted. He stood up. "Yeah, coach," he said, his voice rough but steady. "I'm still in it." The weeks leading up to the Birmingham State Marathon blurred into a montage of aching muscles, early alarms, and the rhythmic click of Mr. Evans's stopwatch. Leo felt stronger, faster than he'd ever thought possible. The awkwardness in his stride had smoothed out, replaced by a hard-won efficiency. Yet the scale of the upcoming race loomed large in his mind, a mountain he wasn't sure he was equipped to climb. He found out about his official entry not from a formal announcement, but from Mr. Evans himself, who casually handed him a folded piece of paper after a grueling track session. It was the official registration confirmation. Leo unfolded it slowly. There, typed in stark black ink beneath rows of names from elite academies and sponsored running clubs, was his own Leo Carter, Northwood, High School Runner 212. His breath hitched. He hadn't dared to ask how the registration fee, a sum impossibly out of reach for his family, had been paid. He looked up at Mr. Evans, whose face remained typically impassive, though Leo thought he saw a glint of satisfaction in the old coach's eyes. "You didn't—" Leo began trailing off. Paperwork needed filing. Mr. Evans interrupted gruffly, waving a dismissive hand. "Figured someone ought to do it. Don't get any grand ideas, though. You don't have to win this thing." He paused, holding Leo's gaze. "But I think you should run it. Run with people who believe they can actually reach the finish line." Leo stared at his name again. Leo Carter, runner 212. It felt impossibly real. He nodded a silent promise, passing between them to coach the final training session. 2 days before, the race felt different. The intensity was still there, but underscored by a quiet gravity. Afterwards, Mr. Evans sat Leo down on the familiar splintery bench beside the track. "All right, listen up." The old coach said, his voice serious. "You're not just running against Vance or the Hayes girl or any of those kids with their fancy shoes and hydration packs." He leaned forward slightly. "You're running against everything that ever told you. Can't, that little voice whispering doubt in your own head. The weight of where you come from, the bills on your kitchen table." He paused, letting the words sink in. "You don't need to beat them, Leo. You just need to cross that finish line knowing you left every single ounce of yourself out there on that road. You prove it to yourself. That's the only victory that truly matters." He clapped Leo gently on the shoulder. "And try not to trip over the pack of reporters fawning over the golden children at the start line. They can be a hazard." Leo managed a small smile at the coach's dry humor. He looked out over the empty field, the wind rustling the tall grass. He nodded, feeling a strange mix of terror and resolve solidify within him. "I'm ready, coach." Word of Leo's participation spread a quiet ripple through the parts of town usually ignored by the local news. Mr. Henderson from the diner gave him a hearty thumbs up when he passed by. Mr. Gable, the retired mailman, who had anonymously donated a sturdy second-hand sports watch he'd found in his collection, offered a quiet nod of encouragement during Leo's morning run. Even a few classmates, the ones who usually kept their distance, offered shy good lucks in the hallway. It was small, but it felt significant, a quiet counterpoint to the media buzz surrounding the race favorites. The local paper ran another feature photos, included Julian Vance, looking smugly confident, quoted about bringing the title home for Northwood, and Olivia Hayes, poised and professional, discussing her training regimen. Leo scanned the article quickly at the library, his name predictably absent. Maybe they ran out of ink before they got to the C's, he thought with a flicker of wry humour. It didn't matter. He wasn't running for headlines. The night before, the marathon felt impossibly long. The air in the trailer was thick with a nervous energy that had little to do with the race. His parents wished him luck, their voices tinged with a familiar blend of hope and anxiety. Maya gave him a carefully drawn picture of a stick figure running labelled Leo Win. Later, alone on his narrow bunk, Leo meticulously cleaned Mr. Evans's old running shoes one last time with a damp cloth, treating them like sacred artifacts. He laid out his race clothes, the worn but clean thrift store hoodie, his faded running shorts, the precious high-performance socks from his anonymous locker benefactor, and bib number 212. Simple humble his armour for the battle ahead. He couldn't sleep. He kept seeing the faces. Julian's sneer, Olivia's distant focus, Mr. Evans's steady gaze, his mother's worried smile. He thought about the miles, the pain, the sacrifices. Was he ready? Could he really do this? The doubts Mr. Evans warned him about, whispered at the edges of his mind. He got up and walked to the small window, looking out at the quiet, sleeping trailer park. A single streetlight cast long shadows. He took a deep breath, the cold air filling his lungs. He didn't know what tomorrow would bring. He didn't know if he could compete with the resources and training of the others. But he knew one thing for sure. He would run. He would give it everything he had. He would finish runner. 212 was ready for the next lap. Marathon morning dawned cold and grey. The Birmingham sky bruised with clouds that threatened rain, but held back, offering instead a sharp, challenging wind. A nervous energy thrummed through the downtown streets, a chaotic symphony of flapping banners, echoing announcements, and the low murmur of thousands of spectators already lining the barricades. Leo stood amidst a sea of brightly clad athletes, a solitary figure in his thrift store hoodie and worn shorts. Around him, runners stretched, bounced checked heart rate monitors strapped to their arms and consulted with coaches and support crews. Julian Vance predictably was holding court near the starting line, snapping selfies with his race bib. 117 held high like a trophy, his expensive gear practically glowing. Olivia Hayes, 12, stood nearby, contained and focused, flanked by her private coach and what looked like a small medical team, her sleek ponytail immaculate, her branded jacket zipped high against the wind. Leo felt a familiar pang of inadequacy, a momentary flicker of the outsider's self-consciousness. He pushed it down, focusing instead on the feel of Mr. Evans's old shoes on his feet, the reassuring weight of the donated watch on his wrist. He did his own quiet stretches, mimicking routines. Mr. Evans had drilled into him, ignoring the surrounding bustle. Mr. Evans found him near the edge of the starting corral, his face as grimly determined as ever. He didn't offer last-minute advice or effusive encouragement. He just met Leo's eyes and said, his voice low and steady, "All right, Leo, you know the plan. Run your race, trust your heart, trust your legs." He gave a single firm nod. "I'll see you at the finish." Then the starting horn blared a sudden sharp sound that unleashed the pent-up energy of the crowd and the runners. The mass surged forward, a tide of determined humanity. Leo held back slightly, letting the initial adrenaline-fueled rush sweep past him. He settled into the steady, controlled pace, brawls. Evans had relentlessly ingrained in him, breathing deeply, rhythmically, finding his space amidst the jostling bodies. Miles melted away. The initial chaos subsided into the long, grinding rhythm of the marathon. Leo focused inward, the feel of his feet hitting the pavement, the cadence of his breathing, the dull ache beginning to build in his quads. He let others burn themselves out in the early stages, sticking religiously to his plan. He sipped water at the designated stations, ignoring the fancy energy gels others consumed. Around mile 10, he began to move up, picking off runners one by one. His pace remained consistent, unwavering, while others started to flag. He ran with a quiet intensity, his gaze fixed ahead, his mind calculating splits, assessing the runners fading around him. By mile 16, the course narrowed, winding through older neighborhoods, with cheering spectators packed tighter along the sidewalks. He saw a familiar figure ahead, Julian Vance. Julian was clearly struggling. His face flushed, his stride uneven. As Leo drew alongside, Julian shot him a venomous glare. Leo saw Julian subtly shift his path, a deliberate attempt to impede him, perhaps hoping for a stumble. Leo anticipated it smoothly, adjusting his line, gliding past without breaking stride. He heard Julian mutter a curse behind him, the sound quickly lost in the noise of the crowd. Leo didn't look back. The miles continued to unspool. 2021. The pack had thinned considerably. Leo's legs burned. His lungs worked hard. But the relentless training held. He felt strong, focused. He passed more runners, recognizing some of the highly touted prospects from the pre-race articles. By mile 22, incredibly, he was running in third place. Ahead, only 2 figures remained within striking distance. One was a seasoned runner from a local university club. The other, leading the race by maybe 30 seconds, was Olivia Hayes. He could see her now, her form still technically perfect, running like a metronome. But even from a distance, Leo noticed something subtle shifting. Her shoulders seemed tighter than before. Her head, usually held high, dipped almost imperceptibly with each stride. He narrowed the gap steadily, relentlessly. Mile 23 passed. The course turned into a winding parkway, lined with tall, skeletal trees. The spectators sparser here. Olivia's lead was shrinking. Leo could hear her breathing, now harsher than expected. Her left arm, usually pumping rhythmically, seemed to dangle slightly, unnaturally. Mile 24. The finish line was less than 2 miles away. Victory, not just finishing, but an actual impossible victory, was suddenly shockingly within reach. He could taste the metallic tang of adrenaline and exhaustion in his mouth. He focused, preparing for the final push to overtake her. Then it happened. Olivia staggered sideways, her perfect form shattering in an instant. Her hand shot out, grasping at the low wooden railing lining the path. Her legs buckled. She crumpled to the ground, landing heavily on her side, utterly still. Leo's own rhythm broke. He slowed instinctively, his heart pounding, not just from exertion, but from shock. His eyes darted around. They were on a relatively isolated stretch of the parkway. Up ahead, perhaps 50 yards around a bend, he saw a small, solitary medical checkpoint. Just a fold-out table, a bench, and a single figure in an EMT vest standing beside it, looking anxiously down the course. The EMT saw Olivia fall. He grabbed his radio, his voice tight with panic, carrying clearly in the relative quiet. Runner down, checkpoint. Delta repeat. Runner down, female. Bib number 12. Need immediate backup, possible heat stroke or severe dehydration. A pause. Then his voice rose in frustration. What do you mean unavailable? Central. The west curve, pile-up is tying up all units. I'm alone out here. I need assistance now. Leo stood frozen for a heartbeat. Maybe 2. The finish line beckoned a shimmering mirage of triumph just minutes away. He was seconds from overtaking Olivia's position. He could win. He could actually win this thing. A victory his family could be proud of. A victory that might change everything. The culmination of months of sacrifice. Pain and ridicule was right there for the taking. He just had to keep running, but he couldn't. He saw Olivia sprawled motionless on the damp earth, her face pale lips tinged blue. He heard the desperation in the lone medic's voice, the chilling words alone out here. He saw the image of his own sister Maya, struggling for breath. The helplessness he'd felt that night, the race, the victory, the personal glory, it all evaporated in that instant, eclipsed by a more fundamental human imperative. His legs screaming in protest after 24 miles, felt rooted to the spot for one agonizing second, as ambition warred with instinct. Then decisively, runner 212 turned his back on the finish line and ran towards the fallen girl. Leo reached Olivia's side just as the young EMT, looking overwhelmed, managed to get an oxygen mask clumsily over her face. "Help me lift her legs," the medic yelled, his voice strained. "Need to get her core temperature down." Leo didn't hesitate. Dropping to his knees on the damp earth, ignoring the screaming protest from his own exhausted muscles, he carefully lifted Olivia's calves, resting her ankles on his shoulders as the medic worked, applying cold compresses ripped from his kit to her neck and forehead. She was terrifyingly still, her skin clammy despite the cool air, her breathing shallow. The medic frantically checked her pulse, murmuring vital signs into his radio, pleading for an update on backup. For a few frantic minutes, they worked together in a strange bubble of focused urgency. Amidst the distant sounds of the ongoing marathon, more runners streamed past on the parkway, their gazes flicking curiously towards the scene before refocusing on their own race, their own pain. None stopped. Finally, the medic gave a relieved sigh. Okay. Pulse is a bit stronger. Temperature seems to be stabilizing slightly." He looked at Leo, his eyes wide behind his glasses. "You bought us time. You probably saved her life, man." Getting her elevated as the quick response. Backup is still 10 minutes out, maybe more. Just then, Olivia's eyelids fluttered. Her eyes, glassy and unfocused, drifted open. For a fleeting second, her gaze seemed to land on Leo, kneeling beside her, holding her legs. There was no recognition, just a dazed, vulnerable confusion before her eyes slipped closed again. The medic nodded towards the trail. "You should go finish your race." Leo hesitated for only a moment longer, ensuring she seemed stable, then carefully lowered her legs. He stood up, his body, a symphony of aches. Every muscle fiber screamed. He wiped the sweat and grime from his brow with the back of his hand. No words were exchanged. No fanfare. He simply turned, leaving Olivia in the care of the lone EMT, and started jogging back towards the race route. His legs felt like they were filled with wet cement. His lungs burned with a different kind of fire now, the fire of utter depletion. The rhythmic grace he'd found earlier was gone, replaced by a heavy, plodding effort just to keep moving forward. One by one, then in small groups, runners passed him. Some offered puzzled glances, wondering where he had come from. Others didn't spare him a look, lost in their own private battles against the distance. He ignored them all. He didn't count how many went by. He didn't care. The race he was running now wasn't against them. He crossed the finish line unceremoniously. The announcer was booming out the name of the third-place finisher. Cameras flashed around the podium, where the winner, the university runner Leo had been closing in on, was already celebrating. Volunteers handed out medals and bottles of water to the top finishers surrounded by reporters. Leo stumbled through the chute, anonymous unnoticed. A volunteer further down handed him a standard finisher's medal, bronze generic, and a cup of lukewarm water without making eye contact. He had finished 5th place, according to a nearby digital clock that seemed to mock him with its precise, uncaring numbers. But someone had noticed. Standing quietly by the edge of the controlled chaos, away from the flashing cameras, was Mr. Evans. His usual gruff expression was unreadable, but his eyes, sharp and clear, were locked onto Leo the moment he emerged. There was no disappointment in that gaze. Instead, Leo saw something deeper, a quiet, profound acknowledgement that transcended place or time. Leo practically fell into the old coach's steadying arms, the breath leaving his body in a ragged, shuddering gasp. For a long moment, neither spoke. The roar of the crowd celebrating someone else washed over them. Finally, Mr. Evans spoke, his voice low, meant only for Leo. "You didn't have to stop." Leo leaned against him, utterly spent. "Couldn't just leave her coach," he mumbled into the fabric of Mr. Evans's old jacket. A faint, rare smile touched the corners of the old man's mouth. He said softly, "No, I suppose you couldn't." The ride back to Oak Haven was quiet, heavy with unspoken thoughts. Leo stared out the window of Mr. Evans's rattling pickup truck, the city streets blurring past. The adrenaline had faded, leaving behind a bone-deep weariness and a hollow ache in his chest that had nothing to do with running 26 miles. He clutched the generic finisher's medal in his hand, its cheap metal cool against his skin. 5th place. He thanked Mr. Evans quietly when they pulled up outside his trailer. The coach just gave him another long look and a firm clap on the shoulder before driving away. Inside the trailer felt small, stuffy. His parents greeted him with anxious questions. "How did it go? Are you okay?" He mumbled something about being tired, showed them the medal without enthusiasm. He saw the flicker of disappointment in their eyes, quickly masked by concern for his well-being. Maya ran up and hugged his legs, holding up her drawing again. "Leo win it," proclaimed proudly. Leo forced a weak smile, patting her head. The irony, a sharp pang in his gut. Later, sitting alone on the edge of his bunk, the sounds of his family settling down for the night, muffled through the thin walls. The full weight of his decision crashed down on him. He smoothed out the crumpled bib number, 212, now stained with sweat and dirt. He placed it on the small shelf next to Maya's drawing. He thought of the finish line, the chance he'd had. He thought of Julian Vance, probably bragging somewhere, maybe even placing ahead of him. Now, he thought of Olivia Hayes, safe somewhere, unaware of the sacrifice made on her behalf. Had he been a fool? He pictured the overdue bills on the kitchen table, the worry etched onto his mother's face, the empty space where a new inhaler for Maya should be. Winning might have meant something. Prize money. Maybe attention. Maybe a small scholarship somewhere. He had been so close. He squeezed his eyes shut, fighting back a wave of frustration and regret. Was doing the right thing worth the cost? Worth the continued struggle for his family? The silence in the small room seemed to amplify his doubts. School the next day was worse. The few students who had followed the marathon offered sympathetic but dismissive comments. "Hey Leo, tough break, man. You almost had a great finish, or better luck next time." "Right?" He just nodded, avoiding eye contact. One well-meaning but clueless classmate, munching on chips, even slapped him on the back. "Hey, Leo, where'd you disappear to during the race?" the kid asked loudly. "Around mile 24. "Thought you snuck off for ice cream or something." Leo just shook his head, a weary sigh escaping him. Julian Vance swaggered past him in the hallway, a smirk firmly in place. He didn't say anything, just gave Leo a look that dripped with condescending amusement, as if confirming his prediction that the kid from the trailer park didn't belong. The final blow came in the noisy lunchroom. He overheard snippets of conversation from a nearby table. Yeah, Carter the one. Everyone was hyping up. Finished 5th. A pause, then laughter. All that effort for nothing should have just kept running. Leo pushed his uneaten lunch away, the food tasteless in his mouth. He didn't correct them. He didn't explain about Olivia, the lone medic, the choice he'd made. What was the point if they needed a trophy or a top 3 finish to understand? Maybe they weren't capable of understanding at all. After school, Mr. Evans found him lingering by the track, staring at the empty gravel oval. The coach had clearly heard the whispers too. "Leo," he said gently, "this isn't sitting right with folks. They don't know the whole story. You want me to talk to the principal? Maybe get a statement out to the local paper. Set the record straight." Leo looked at his coach, seeing the genuine concern in his eyes. He appreciated the offer, the unwavering support. But he shook his head, a quiet certainty settling over him amidst the turmoil. "No, coach," he said, his voice low but firm. "Let it sit. Truth's still true, even if nobody claps for it." He met Mr. Evans's gaze, a silent understanding passing between them again. He had made his choice on that parkway. He would live with the consequences, the silence, the misunderstanding. He didn't need applause to know he'd done what his heart told him was right, even if it felt incredibly lonely right now. 2 days passed in a haze of quiet routine and simmering unease. For Leo, he went to school, endured the lingering whispers and sideways glances, worked his shift at the grocery store, and avoided the track, the thought of running, feeling strangely heavy. The conversation with Mr. Evans replayed in his mind. Truth still true, even if nobody claps for it. He clung to that thought, a small anchor in a sea of misunderstanding. Then, on a Tuesday afternoon, just as Leo was helping his dad try to coax their sputtering old lawn-mower back to life in the dusty patch beside the trailer, the improbable happened. A car unlike any ever seen in Oakhaven, Mobile Home Park, turned slowly onto their narrow, potholed street. It was long, black, and gleaming, a Cadillac sedan that seemed to absorb the pale afternoon light. It moved with a deliberate, almost hesitant pace, as if acutely aware it didn't belong. Heads turned, curtains twitched in neighboring trailers, the usual sounds of the park, a distant barking dog, the drone of an old air conditioner, seemed to fade into a sudden, watchful silence. The Cadillac rolled to a stop directly in front of Leo's trailer. Leo and his father froze, grease-stained rag forgotten in his dad's hand. His mother appeared at the screen door, wiping her hands on her apron, her eyes wide with confusion and a touch of fear. Who could possibly be visiting them in a car like that? The driver's side door opened, and a tall man in a perfectly tailored charcoal grey suit emerged. He looked sharp, serious, his presence commanding attention effortlessly. Then the passenger door opened, and Olivia Hayes stepped out. She looked paler than Leo remembered from the race, and her left arm rested in a simple sling, but she stood tall, her gaze scanning the modest trailer with a neutral expression. The man, undoubtedly her father, closed his door with a soft, expensive thud and walked towards them. Leo felt his stomach clench. His mother stepped out onto the flimsy wooden steps, his father moving protectively beside her. Leo instinctively moved to stand slightly behind them, unsure what to expect. "Are you Leo Carter?" the man asked, his voice calm but carrying an undeniable weight of authority. He stopped a respectful distance away. Leo's father nodded warily. "I'm his father. This is his mother. What's this about?" The man's gaze shifted to Leo, assessing him for a moment before returning to his parents. "My name is Robert Hayes. This is my daughter Olivia." Leo's mother gasped softly, recognition dawning. Olivia stepped forward slightly, her voice quiet but clear. "He saved my life," she said, looking directly at Leo now. The dazed confusion Leo had seen in her eyes 2 days ago was gone, replaced by a clear, unwavering sincerity. "During the marathon, I collapsed. Heat stroke," the medic said. "Well, he said I wouldn't have made it if Leo hadn't stopped and helped." She took a small, steadying breath. "He gave up his race for me." The silence that followed was thick, broken only by the distant hum of highway traffic. Leo saw his mother's hand fly to her mouth, her eyes instantly filling with tears. His father stared speechless, his wary expression melting into stunned disbelief. Mr. Hayes nodded gravely. "Olivia has told me everything about what you did. Leo, about the choice you made when no one else would have blamed you for running on." He met Leo's eyes again. "I don't give out handouts, son. I don't believe in pity. But I absolutely believe in recognizing integrity. And what you did out there." He shook his head slightly, a look of profound respect in his eyes. "That was the definition of character, of sportsmanship. That's the kind of quality I want associated with the programs I support." He took a step closer, extending his hand towards Leo. Leo automatically wiped his own hand on his jeans before shaking it briefly. Mr. Hayes's grip was firm. "Therefore, Mr." Hayes continued, turning slightly to include Leo's parents. "I'm offering Leo a full athletic scholarship to the Pennington Athletics Institute, the private training facility I sponsor. Top coaches, nutritionists, equipment, everything he needs to reach his full potential. And I'd like him to join the elite youth track club, my foundation funds. It's not just about winning races, Leo. It's about building leaders." Leo's mouth opened, but no sound came out. He felt dizzy, unreal. A full scholarship, elite training. It was beyond anything he had ever dared to imagine. Mr. Hayes then turned fully to Leo's parents, his tone remaining businesslike, but not unkind. "And for the two of you," he said, "if you're interested, I currently have openings at 2 of my regional distribution centers, management positions, stable hours, full benefits, proper salaries." He looked pointedly around at the trailer, then back at them, his expression softening almost imperceptibly. "You've done enough surviving. It's time you had the space to simply live." The world seemed to tilt on its axis. Leo saw his mother openly weeping now, tears of relief streaming down her face. His father swallowed hard, nodding mutely, his own eyes glistening. The years of struggle, the constant worry, the crushing weight of poverty. Leo could almost feel it, lifting, dissolving in the afternoon sun. From the corner of his eye, Leo saw Mr. Evans standing near the curb, having approached quietly during the exchange, watching it all unfold with his arms crossed, his expression carefully neutral. Leo found his voice rough with emotion. He cleared his throat and looked from Mr. Hayes back to his coach. "Mr. Hayes," he said, surprised at the steadiness in his own voice. "Thank you, sir. It's amazing." He gestured towards his coach. "But if I go, Mr. Evans goes too. He's the reason I got this far. He believed in me when no one else did." Mr. Hayes followed Leo's gaze, appraising Mr. Evans for a long moment. The old coach simply met his stare, unflinching. Mr. Hayes then gave a slight smile. "A young man who values loyalty," he mused, "and a coach who clearly knows how to spot potential." He nodded towards Mr. Evans. "We could always use a man with an eye for heart at the Institute, and perhaps someone," he added, a twinkle in his eye, "who can tell the difference between genuine speed and swatting at butterflies. Mr. Evans allowed himself a small, dry smirk. Mr. Hayes looked back at Leo's family. Consider him invited as a senior advisor to the youth program. He then added almost as an aside. It also means I can focus my foundation's resources on athletes who demonstrate both talent and character. Sometimes you have to reevaluate where true potential lies. The unspoken implication regarding athletes like Julian Vance hung briefly in the air before dissipating. The relief that washed over Leo was immense, purging the last dregs of doubt and bitterness from the past 2 days. He looked at his parents, saw the dawning hope transforming their tired faces. He looked at Mr. Evans, saw the deep, quiet pride finally allowed to surface. He looked at Olivia, who offered him a small, genuine smile of gratitude. Everything had changed, not because he had chased a finish line, but because, when the moment demanded it, he had chosen to stop. And someone had finally seen the victory, in that the months following the marathon unfolded like a dream. Leo hadn't dared to have the constant grinding worry that had been the background hum of his family's life began to soften, replaced by a tentative sense of stability. His parents thrived in their new management positions at Mr. Hayes's company. They came home tired, yes, but it was the satisfying exhaustion of productive work, not the soul-crushing fatigue of desperation. Their smiles were quicker, their laughter less rare. They even started talking about, maybe looking for a slightly larger place to live, something with fewer leaks and more reliable heating. Maya's asthma was better managed, the fear of running out of medicine receding thanks to proper health insurance. Leo, meanwhile, stepped into a world previously confined to glossy magazines. The Pennington Athletics Institute was a universe away from the cracked gravel track at Northwood High. State-of-the-art equipment gleamed under bright lights, nutritionists crafted meal plans, coaches with impressive credentials analyzed his form using slow-motion video playback. He wore new high-tech running shoes, provided by the program shoes that felt impossibly light and springy, yet tucked away carefully in a box under his bed in the small room he still shared with his brother, wrapped in a clean towel like something sacred remained Mr. Evans's old pair. Scuffed soles, faded laces, ingrained dirt from the Birmingham Parkway. They were his anchor, his reminder of where he came from, of the miles traveled not just on pavement, but within himself. He needed that reminder amidst the polished surfaces and optimized schedules of his new reality. Mr. Evans settled into his role as senior advisor at the youth track club with characteristic lack of fanfare. He showed up every day, stopwatch inevitably in hand, observing the young athletes with his keen, critical eye. He offered curt nods of approval or sharp, insightful corrections, treating everyone with the same gruff fairness. He seemed almost out of place amidst the shiny newness of the facility. "Place is too clean," he grumbled good-naturedly to Leo one afternoon, watching a grounds crew meticulously sweep an already spotless walkway. Hard to find anything proper to complain about. Makes a man restless. But Leo saw the quiet satisfaction in his eyes as he watched the kids train, saw the pride when Leo hit a new personal best. Their bond, forged in hardship and mutual respect, remained unchanged, perhaps even deepened by the shared, unexpected turn their lives had taken. Leo saw Olivia Hayes regularly at the Institute, where she also trained. The initial awkwardness faded, replaced by a quiet, mutual respect. There was no lingering resentment, no false familiarity. Sometimes they'd run warm-up laps together, talking sporadically about upcoming meets or difficult training sets. One afternoon, sitting on a bench after practice, she looked over at him, her expression thoughtful. "You know," she said quietly, "I watch the footage sometimes, from the medic's body, cam at the marathon. She met his eyes. You really didn't hesitate. You could have won. Leo shrugged, looking out at the track. Maybe. But winning isn't everything, is it? Olivia was silent for a moment, then nodded slowly. No, she admitted. No, it's not. You taught me that. It wasn't friendship, not exactly, but it was an understanding forged in a shared, defining moment. Leo's name began appearing on entry lists for major regional meets, then national junior championships. His picture occasionally popped up in track and field blogs. Leo Carter, the surprise talent, turning heads. He won some races, lost others. But through the rising profile, the wins and losses, he never forgot Oak Haven or Northwood High. Once a month he went back. He volunteered during gym class, helping the overworked teacher, organizing impromptu relay races, sharing tips he'd learned. He didn't preach or lecture. He just showed up, ran with the kids, listened to them. He encouraged them to find their thing, whatever it was. Running, reading, painting, tinkering with old bikes. You don't have to be the fastest, he'd say, echoing Mr. Evans, but adding his own layer. You just have to keep moving forward. Find what makes your heart beat fast, and help someone else out when you can. Then one sunny spring afternoon, during one of his volunteer sessions at Northwood, he saw him, a small boy, maybe 10 or 11, standing alone at the edge of the track, watching the other kids run chaotic laps with a quiet, intense longing in his eyes. He reminded Leo acutely of himself years ago. Leo walked over casually. "Hey," he said gently, "you want to run?" The boy looked up, startled, then quickly looked down at his bare feet, shuffling nervously in the dirt beside the track. He shrugged his voice, barely a whisper. "I don't have shoes." Leo's heart gave a familiar pang. He smiled a warm, genuine smile. He knelt, unzipped the athletic bag he carried, a sleek new one provided by the Institute, and pulled out an old soft shoebox. He lifted the lid. Inside lay Mr. Evans's shoes, the marathon shoes, the ones that had carried him through miles of pain and doubt, the ones that had carried Olivia Hayes to safety. They were clean, but undeniably worn, bearing the honorable scars of their journey. "They're not new," Leo said softly, holding the box out to the boy. "They've run a lot of miles, but they've got heart." He met the boy's wide, disbelieving eyes. "And they'll take you somewhere." The boy stared at the shoes as if they were made of solid gold. Hesitantly, reverently, he reached out and took them. He sat down immediately, carefully putting them on his bare feet. They were a little big, but he laced them up tightly. Then he stood up, took a tentative step, then another, and then he started to run. He ran across the gravel track, awkward at first, arms flailing slightly just like Leo used to. But with each step he seemed to gain confidence, his small figure moving faster, a look of pure, unadulterated joy spreading across his face. Leo stood back, watching a lump forming in his own throat. Mr. Evans, who had been sitting on the familiar old bleachers, watching the scene unfold, leaned back and smiled a deep, satisfied smile. "Full circle, Leo?" he murmured as Leo walked over to join him. Leo nodded, his eyes never leaving the small figure running with newfound freedom on the track. He thought about his journey, the unexpected turns the finish lines crossed, and the ones ignored. "Nah, coach," he said softly, a quiet understanding settling over him, peaceful and profound. "It's just the next lap." And under the wide Alabama sky, on a worn gravel track behind an underfunded school, the shoes kept running, carrying forward not just a boy, but a legacy of hope passed on from one heart to another. Leo called it just the next lap. But sometimes the most important laps aren't the ones measured by speed or distance, are they? They're the ones measured in courage, in kindness, in the quiet choices we make when the world isn't watching, or maybe when it misunderstands completely. It makes you wonder, doesn't it? How often do we race past our own moments to choose character over victory, legacy over immediate reward? Leo's journey reminds us that true strength isn't just about crossing a finish line first. It's about lifting others up along the way, even when it costs us something. It's about recognizing that sometimes the greatest prize isn't a medal, but the ripple effect of a single, selfless act, echoing long after the crowds have gone home. This story really resonated with us, and we hope it touched you too. We believe these journeys of the human spirit are worth sharing. Now we'd love to hear your reflections. After witnessing Leo's choice and its consequences, what does winning truly mean to you? Share your thoughts in the comments below. Let's create a space for meaningful conversation. If Leo's story moved, you please give this video a like. It helps us know what connects with you. And if you think someone else might find value or inspiration in this journey, please share it with them. Don't forget to subscribe and hit the notification bell so you won't miss our next exploration into the stories that shape us and reveal the best of the human heart. Thank you for watching, and until next time, keep moving forward.